First of all, most of you know who I am and know who Kim is, and some of you may not. So a couple little sides about who we are. So Kim and I are just a mom and pop team. First thing you need to know is we're not attorneys and we're not CPAs. We're just mom and pop real estate investors. Most of our life, we worked a 5 mile circle around the Cartersville, Georgia Walmart. And that's where our rentals are. So we own a fair number of rentals. We've done a lot of option work. We do a lot of lending. We own a mobile home park. And I was never one that, we never went out and did 20 or 30 or 40 deals a month. We did somewhere between 10 to maybe 13 deals a year. But we did that for a couple decades and we kept a lot of our better houses and got them paid off. And now we're both in our mid 60s and we sold our horse ranch that we had in just north of Cartersville, Georgia back in 2018. And we moved into a motorhome which is where we've lived since March of 2018. So this month is 7 years of us living full time in a motorhome and traveling the country. And from, let's call it March through November, we would move every 17 or 14 days as we traveled around the country. And then during the wintertime, we parked in Florida, usually somewhere around St. Pete. The last 2 years we've been in Venice, Florida. And Kim found Venice, Florida, and has decided this is where she wants to live. And so we're buying our forever house second week of April. And we'll be moving in there. But as of today, as of 2 days ago, we sold our motorhome and my car, which tows behind this motorhome. And we're moving into Ed Taylor. Ed Taylor, a good friend of mine, that is the reason why we're in Venice. He has a VRBO here, and we're moving into it this afternoon and tomorrow, and we will be out of the motorhome, and that stage of our life comes to an end, and now we'll become residents of Venice, and then do more world traveling versus traveling across the country. So that's what's going on. So nothing special about us, just we've done it for a long time and have tried to do good deals by everybody, and we've been teaching since the 90s. And you should know that most of our deals over the years have come from door knocking. And I'm not saying that you have to be a door knocker, but I do strongly believe that the way we succeed is we have to get face to face with homeowners and solve their real estate problems. And if you're not doing that, then it's going to be very hard for you to succeed. So whether you knock on someone's door or you're using bandit signs or you have someone marketing for you or you go through realtors or FMLS or whatever you use, as long as you're getting face to face with folks and making a lot of written offers, you do well. If you're not, there's going to be a problem. So we'll be doing 2 free deal schools, and one is today, and then we'll be doing one on Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. It'll start at 7 p.m. and we'll finish at 9 p.m. Eastern time, both on Eastern time. Today we'll be talking about the options of the basics of options and what they are and how they work and showing you examples of them. But on Tuesday, I'm going to be talking about advanced real estate options, and you're going to see some of the more intricate deals, intricate ways Kim and I work with options. So both classes will be recorded. I was asked that a little bit earlier, and everyone who registers for either the Saturday today's class or on Tuesday, you'll get a recording. And so I was trying to get it where it could be one registration, and it's not. I wasn't able to pull that off. And so those of you that are registered for the Saturday class, you'll need to also register for the Tuesday class, and you'll see that registration in the email that Kim sent out. And when this is done, Kim will be emailing you a recording of these two programs, but you also will be able to find them on our website, which is at billingkimcook.com, or on our YouTube channel, Bill and Kim Cook, or on our Facebook page, Bill and Kim Cook. So today we'll be talking about the power of options. So what qualifies me to teach about options? So in 1999, I attended my first Jack Miller seminar where he talked about options. And that really intrigued me. I kind of got hooked on options just from that one class. Also from 1999 through 2000 to 2009, and Jack passed away in 2009, pretty much every time he taught an options class, along with a lot of his other classes, I attended. I thought he was an incredibly great teacher when it came down to advanced deal structuring. Also, another of my teachers is Pete Fortunato. And since up until today, since 1998 through today, I go to his seminars whenever he teaches, and I can make it there and I attend almost everything. So from the get-go, like as I said, I was hooked on options, and Kim and I did our first two option deals in 2001. So over 20 years ago. And those first two options were lease options, and that's where we bought a house, we leased the property to someone who's going to use the home, and then we gave them the right to buy it. And that's how most people know about options. So for more than 2 decades, options have been our most used creative deal structuring tool. And I say that because in almost every deal we do, whether I'm doing an option deal or I'm buying or I'm selling a property or I'm doing a loan, some sort of option work is involved in the structure. And options have generated a large portion of our wealth. And you'll see how that works in the deals that you'll see. So we're going to be doing a seminar. The reason why we're doing the two deal schools is we'll be doing a seminar March 22nd, 23rd, 2025. It's going to be in Tampa, Florida, warm, sunny Tampa, Florida. Or you can attend on Zoom, either one, but you'd be wise to do face to face. We're going to be at Marriott, that's very close to the Tampa airport. A lot of players are showing up. There's going to be a lot of great networking. When I say players, I mean investors who have been investing for 2 decades or longer. A lot of the people I've known for a long time, they come to this thing because it's a place for them to come hang out. But also we're talking about advanced deal structuring, and that attracts some of the best investors in the country. We have an early bird special running right now for this class, which is $597. You can bring a guest, $397. And I don't know, make sure I said this. If you can't come in person, you can attend on Zoom, and the seminar will be recorded, and everybody who attends will be getting a copy of the 2-day seminar. And to get full information and to register, just go to billingkimcook.com. So how do we most use options? And there's a number of ways we use this great big valuable tool. When an owner doesn't want to sell, we use an option. When an owner doesn't want to sell right now, so let me give you an example of an owner who doesn't want to sell. One of the deals you'll see tonight is where the owner was facing foreclosure in 2 weeks in Georgia. She did not want to sell. She did not want to move, but an option worked best for her. And you'll see that deal tonight. Also, an owner who doesn't want to sell right now. So the house that Kim and I are buying in Venice, when we got the option, they did not want to sell right now. They wanted to sell only after they found a house to buy. And on Tuesday of this week, they told us that they had just put a house under contract in Venice Country Club, and they're closing on April the 15th. And now they're ready for us to exercise the option and buy the property, which we'll do the second week of April before they buy their house in Venice. When we need to park a property, and that's kind of what I did with the house in Venice. I just needed to park it for a while, but there was another deal that you'll see on Tuesday where the owner was going to lose the house to a tax auction. This is a house in Tampa we did last year, and for me to save the property and not have it go to a tax deed auction, I had to pay off the property taxes to the tune of about $17,000 or $18,000, which I didn't want to do if I was just holding a purchase and sale agreement. So I got a secured option from the owner of the property, and the consideration was I would pay off the property taxes, which I did, and then I exercised the option, and that was in 2000 into 2023. And I exercised the option in February of 2024, and we bought the property. But having a secured option in place was the best way to go. When we need to max out a sale price, in other words, when we buy a property and we want to get as much as we can for it, we will lease the house and give someone the right to buy. And because we're giving them time to get their credit right and to be able to qualify for a mortgage, we can ask for a higher sale price. When we want to limit a tax hit when we're selling, and on Tuesday, you'll see Reynolds Bridge Road, which was a house that we bought for basically it was about $50,000, and we could have sold it immediately for about 140, 150, but I didn't want to because that would have been earned income, and a big tax hit. So instead, I leased it to someone who wanted to buy it, and I offered them to give them owner financing, but I said I wanted to watch them for a year so they could prove they would take care of the property and pay on time. And only then would I sell them the house and give owner financing if they made all their payments on time and took care of the property. So that was a case of what really happened was I went from having earned income on the sale to it became a rental that I sold a year later that allowed me, if I wanted to do, I could have done a 1031. And yes, Kim, what is a secured option? Good question. So when you have an option by itself, it's just, is a document that two people hold. But it's kind of when you do a loan from, let's say you get a mortgage, you get a loan from Bank of America to buy a house, and you sign a note, a promissory note that says, you're borrowing this money and you're going to pay it back at 8% interest, $3,000 a month, 30 years. Let's say that's the agreement. Well, the lender wants to make sure that note is secured. So in other words, if you don't do what you promise, if you don't make your payments like you promised, if you don't take care of the property like you promised, they want the right to foreclose. In other words, they want the right to call the note due, and your job then is to pay off the note. But if you don't, then they have the right to foreclose because the property is the collateral for the promise. Well, most people think a mortgage or a deed of trust only secures promissory notes. They do not. And that's a big aha right there. And we'll talk about how to secure options on Tuesday. But what mortgage does or deed of trust does is that it secures a promise, and an option is a promise. And I'll talk about the option I just recorded in Sarasota 3 weeks ago and what I had to go through in order to get it recorded. But it was pretty neat. So also when an owner needs money, but no one will loan them money. And what happens there is a lot of times someone will come to me if someone needs credit card debt paid or something and they're an owner occupant of their home. I won't loan that person money because of Dodd-Frank. However, I will purchase the right to buy their house at a pre-agreed to price, pre-agreed to term sometime in the future. So they get what they want and I get what I want. Also an owner who needs money, but they just don't want more debt service. And you're going to see an example of that today where someone was going to be forced to sell because they couldn't afford the property taxes anymore. And there are a lot of people around these days because property taxes have shot up a lot over the last 5, 6, 7 years, and where they could afford the house back in 2015 because property taxes have gotten so high and insurance has gotten so high, now they no longer can afford their houses, but they don't want to move. And an option can be used to fix that kind of problem. So here's what most investors know about options. I'm going to give you an example of that. They think there's only one type of option out there. Yes, Kim. What most people think is there's just one type of option, and that's called a lease option. And most people think that a lease option is one tool. It's not. It's two different tools. So the first tool is a lease, and a lease gives someone use of the property. The second tool is an option, and that option tool gives someone the right to buy the property at a pre-agreed to price for a pre-agreed to terms. Two different tools. So when I'm doing a lease with an option to purchase, those are two different documents, two different contracts doing two completely different things. And you're about to see that in action. So this is an example of an option, a lease option deal that Kim and I did back in 2005. So this is one of our early lease options deal. This was at 28 Saddle Lane in Cartersville, Georgia. So I'm sure you can get on Google Maps and find this. I have no idea what this house looks like today, but this is what it looked like when we bought it. And it has a pool in the backyard. So let's talk about the purchase of this property first. When we knocked on the door, we purchased the property on August 31st, 2005, and that was 6 days before the foreclosure auction. In other words, the owner of the property was going to lose this house to foreclosure in 6 days. And we knocked on the door because they were in foreclosure, and they would rather get something out of the house than get nothing and lose the house to foreclosure. And the purchase price was $91,000. I will tell you the house is probably worth about $125,000, $130,000 when we bought it. So we got some good equity, and it was a subject to deal. And some of you may not know what a subject to deal is. A subject to deal, and I don't want to teach a subject to class right now, but what it is we're buying a house and the seller's mortgage is staying in place. It's not being paid off, and we're not assuming it. When we assume a mortgage, that means the mortgage goes from the borrower's name to our name. We're now on the mortgage. With a subject to deal, the seller's name, the borrower's name stays on the mortgage. They stay responsible for it. What we're agreeing to do is make their mortgage payments on their mortgage for them until their mortgage is paid according to the terms of their note. So you may say, who would ever agree to something like that? The house we're buying in Venice, second week of April 2025, that is a subject to deal. And we're getting ready to buy another house in Cartersville, Georgia on Stonebridge Court, I think in about 2 weeks. And that's also a subject to deal. So Kim and I do a lot of subject to deals. And anyway, so this is one of them. So here is when we bought it, about a month later, it's about 30 days later, the house needed just, some freshen up, but not very much. And we rented this house for $925. And this house, the going rent at the time was probably about $875. So we were able to charge $50 more in rent because we were willing to give the tenants the right to buy the property sometime in the next 12 months, in the next year. So here we are. So you saw the lease. Now you're looking at the option agreement. So this is one of my early option agreements. And yes, in my 2-day Power of Options course, you will get my documents. And they don't look like this. This was done a long, long time ago, and my option agreements have come a long way. I've learned a lot over the 20 some odd years, or in this case, 20 years since I did this deal. But yes, you get all of our documents that we use. So I sold, the key here, word here is sold the tenant the right to buy the property, pre-agreed to price and terms, and they agreed to pay $135,000 for the house, which was about $10,000 more than fair market value. And the consideration, in other words, what they gave me for me giving them the right to buy my house was $2,500. And it was a 1-year option. So they at the end of 12 months, they needed to exercise the option and buy the property. And I also gave them a rent credit of $50 a month for every on-time rent payment that they made me. So real simple thing, easy document to do, not easy, simple document to do, but this was the accord. That was in like September, October when they rented it. And a year later in December 2006, this is them buying the property. So they went a little over the 12 months, but they were close to getting, they've been working hard to be able to buy the property. They got qualified for the mortgage. The sale price was $135,000. This was in December of 2006, about a year, about 13, 14 months after they moved in. And our our gross profit, not net, gross profit was $44,000 on this deal. But because we rented first, on this property, we got long-term capital gains first earned income. And I was able to do, if I chose to do a 1031 out of this property into another property and pay zero capital gains, zero depreciation recapture. In this case, we did not do a 1031. We needed the money for another deal, so we took the cash and paid the taxes. One of the things I hear, and when I'm making my offers, and I've heard that this year when I'm making offers, that realtors will tell me that they don't do options. And a couple of them said, hey, options are illegal in Florida. You didn't know that. Well, here's something that you should know, that realtors and buyers and sellers use options almost every day. And almost every option agreement or every realtor's contract begins life as an option contract. If you'll read the contract, it will say it begins life as an option contract. And here's why. Let's say you make an offer on a house to buy it for $500,000, and the seller agrees to sell it to you for $500,000, and you sign the contract. Okay, that's a binding contract. You're both obligated. But if you as buyer say, I will pay $500,000 subject to me having an adequate inspection done in the next 3 weeks and me get qualifying for a mortgage at 7% interest, before I buy the property. That means that no matter what, the seller is obligated to you to sell to you and not anybody else. However, you can get out of the contract if the inspection doesn't meet your approval, or if you're not able to get a mortgage that suits you because you wrote the two contingencies into the contract. That's what makes it an option. So whenever someone tells me, well, I don't do option work, yeah, almost everybody does almost all the time when it comes into real estate. So now let's just give, that's one, that's a lease option. That's how almost everybody knows an option. But now what I want to do is I want to be just a little bit more creative and step it up just a little bit. And this is going to, what we're about to do is called a pure option, because this option is being used by itself. It's not being used with a lease agreement. So what you're about to see is a pure option deal, but it's just a little bit more creative, and you're going to love this thing. So out of curiosity, how many landlords do we have? Kim, I guess you can't tell that. Put it in chat. If you're a landlord, say yes, I'm a landlord, or yes. And Kim, can you read off about how many landlords? My guess is at least half the callers are landlords. Half the people in the call are landlords.
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay, so most of you are landlords, and you're going to have run into just what I'm about to talk about. And an option allows me to control this problem much more so than it would be if I don't know how to use an option. So have you ever gone to a prospective tenant, you're showing a house, and the right tenant shows up and you're like, man, I like this person a lot. But they say to you, I can't rent right now. I have to give a 2-month notice or a 1-month notice, or I have to get the money together, or whatever's going on. That's happened to all of us. And then that person will come to you and say, tell you what, I'll go ahead and give you a security deposit to hold the property, or I'll pay you the first month's rent to hold the property. We've all gone through this. A really good tenant, we like them, we think they're perfect. They need time before they can rent the property from us. For different reasons, they need time. So what do you do? Someone unmute and tell me what you do when this comes across your table.
Go ahead and sign the lease and have the
Lease
start
it,
date be
hold on.
later, but take their rent and take their security deposit now.
Yeah, but they can't really sign a lease because they're not moving in yet. They don't get used to the property yet because they don't have, they're wanting to give you a deposit. They want to hold the
You
property.
can always sign a lease and have the move-in date be later.
You can do that, and it works kind of like an option. But let's go one step further. So several weeks later, the prospective tenant, let's say they gave you a security deposit, or they gave you the first month's rent, they decide to back out for whatever reason. They're like, yeah, this house doesn't work for me, or we're moving somewhere else. And they come to you and they say, I want my security deposit back that you're holding because I'm not going to move in. And then they say, if you don't give it back to me, I'm going to take you to court. We're going to go in front of a judge. So what do you do then? You're holding their security deposit. They come back to you and say, I want it back. I'm not going to rent from you. What do you do? What do you do now? They're threatening to sue you. Do we not give them their money back?
Give it back to him.
Yeah, you give the money back to them. Who wants to go through all this mess? Just take the money. Now, meantime, your rental house was sitting there empty for another 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is you agreed to. And now your prospective tenant backs out, and now you got to start all over again. And how much money did you lose in the meantime? So that's not a fun thing. So let's talk about a way to fix this problem. Why not sell the prospective tenant an option to lease, not an option to purchase, or not an option to rent? I mean, not an option to purchase, but an option to lease the property from you. And that's the document you're looking at right here. So I had a tenant come to me and they wanted to move in. And this was a property at 11 Clubhouse Drive in White, Georgia. So what you're looking at is an option to lease. This is a very simple option. And yes, during my Power of Options seminar, we go into a lot more detail. I'm just skimming over the surface on some of these things that you're seeing today. But because I have 2 days during the options class, I can go into a lot more detail. But what you're looking at is I'm giving them the right to lease the property. But look at how I do it. This is an 11-day option because they said they need 11 days to come up with the money, but they're scared of not getting the house. And I said, okay, I'll get if you'll give me $1,000 non-refundable option consideration fee. This is not security deposit. This is not the first month's rent. I'm selling them the right to rent my property sometime in the next 11 days, and they're paying me $1,000 for that right, and I can't rent to anybody else in the next 11 days. And so the consideration applies in this case to the first month's rent. It's not the first month's rent, but it applies. This is strong and it's non-refundable. And if they want to go to court with this, I'm all about it. Let's go to court. Let's see how that works out for you. Because this is just so solid versus taking a security deposit or first month's rent. Because a judge can look and say, yeah, they didn't rent your property or they didn't move in. But with this, you did sell them the option. There was a transaction. And now they're not exercising their option. And so you keep the money and you're in the driver's seat and they didn't do what they promised. Any questions about this? So let's,
Bill, you probably
Yeah.
would never also need to have a release of that option like you normally do with a land option or something. You know, the clear title, they love to get those releases executed, but you wouldn't, because time, you wouldn't even need to have a release of that option, right?
well, I didn't secure that option. That's an option I gave to a tenant. There's no way I'm going to secure that to the property. No way.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So all that happens is, they're holding the option. And if they, after the 11 days, if they don't rent from me, the option expires. If they do rent from me in the next 11 days, they're exercising their option and they're going to get a lease from me. Simple as that. So let's talk about what an option is in uncertain times. And I would consider that today. There's a lot of people being laid off in the federal government and not sure what's going on, not sure what's going to happen. We don't know what next year looks like. And when I get into uncertain times, I'm going to move from deeds and mortgages. I'm going to move away from buying property. And instead, I'll use master leases and secured options just because they're safer, because I can walk away from them easily. Where if I buy a property, like the property we're buying in Venice, I can't walk away from that. I'm buying it. I'm on the hook for it. But with a master lease or an option, I can, if I'm unsure what's going on, I want to move away from it. And we did this a lot during the big downturn of '07 through 2012. We were using master leases and options like crazy because I didn't know where the bottom was. And then after we hit bottom, we started up, I started exercising options and buying properties, but we had agreed to a price that was way below what the value ended up being. So options are not only a valuable tool to use in almost every real estate transaction. Quite often, they're the best tool among all the tools that are available to deal makers. On Tuesday, you're going to see again me using more examples of more option deals and what those structures look like. But boy, can you use them. And at the same time, and this always has surprised me, at the same time, options are the least understood and least used tool in real estate. So the best tool to use is least used and least understood. And I say that to say this: options, when I say they're the least used, in reality, they're the most used. And the question you may have is, how can this be? As I told you, when you're dealing with a realtor's purchase and sale agreement, that almost always starts off life as an option agreement, but nobody's aware of it. How about that? So an option is a wonderful advanced deal structuring tool to use, whether you're going to be buying the property, or you're selling the property, or you're renting the property, or you're speculating or protecting. We've already talked about buying a property, and we've already talked about selling a property. You saw that with the lease option, and we talked about renting when I get the security deposit. Okay, so it's just a great tool for so many different things. So simply put, an option, when you ask what it is a right to buy a property rather than an obligation. So it's a case of I may buy it, but no one's saying I must buy it. I decide when I'm going to exercise that option, or if I'm going to exercise the option, which makes the deal very, very safe. So let's say someone says Walmart is moving into the area and everybody starts speculating hard and heavy and buying property all around where that Walmart may or may not go. But let's say the Walmart doesn't come in and a lot of people bought property or, we're going to develop land or whatever was going to happen, then Walmart doesn't come in, then the speculation burns a lot of people. What I would do instead is if I heard Walmart was going to build in the area, I'd go out and get some lease options on property and I'd wait until that Walmart got built, it got opened, and it was been open for a year doing well. And then I would exercise the option and buy the property, but my strike price, what I'll pay for the property, is based on before the Walmart was built. That's the price I'm paying. But what I'm selling it for is the value of that property after the Walmart has been built, opened, and doing well for a year. It's just a safe way. It gives you a chance to do a deal looking in the rearview mirror versus guessing on what's coming around the corner. So options can allow you to control a property's gain. And the way you do that, let's talk about gain. That just means appreciation of the property. And if you have the right to buy property for $200,000, and that's today's fair market value, but you're not going to exercise the option for maybe 10 years, then as that property goes up in value over the next 10 years, you're locked in at today's price. But as that property goes up in value, you're capturing that gain. You can also capture a property's amortization. And what you'd have in the lease agreement then is your strike price, your purchase price would be the then balance of the mortgage. So let's say you're buying a property and someone has a $200,000 mortgage. And you say that I will buy the property for the then balance of the mortgage, and you have a 10-year option. That means during the 10 years, every time that person, that homeowner, makes a payment on the mortgage, the mortgage balance is reducing, is amortizing down. That means your purchase price, because it's linked to the then balance of the mortgage, is also reducing. So if you wait the full 10 years, you're going to have captured all that amortization on that loan, plus any appreciation that property had. You're getting both directions, making that deal very, very safe. And you can even capture a property's cash flow. And you can do all this without actually owning the property. And I won't talk about how to do a property's cash flow. I will do that during the seminar, but it's an idea that the wonderful Pete Fortunato came up with. But again, I'll save that for the class. Can you name another deal structuring tool that allows you to do this? And the answer is no. This is the tool to use for these things. So here's a real big one as far as when it comes to options. An option is not a loan. So if I'm dealing with an owner occupant, someone who owns their own home, and I don't want to deal with Dodd-Frank, so I'm not going to loan them any money because it's Dodd-Frank. But let's say they own their own home and they need to borrow money and they don't want to sell, and maybe they can't get more credit, or maybe they don't want to increase how much they're paying out in debt every month. But I can go to them and acquire an option. They're going to sell me an option. I'm going to give them some money or something they find valuable. And in return, they give me the right to buy. And they don't incur any more debt because let's say they have $5,000 in credit card debt and they want that paid off. And so maybe I knock on their door or someone tells me about them and I meet with them and I agree to pay off their credit card debt. In this case, let's say I'm not going to give them $5,000. I just agree to send the money and pay off the credit card debt. In return, they're going to give me the right to buy their property via an option secured to the property. So they don't owe me the $5,000 back. There's no interest rate. There's no payments. They did not incur any more debt. But what they gave up was maybe it's going to be appreciation. Maybe it's going to be amortization. But they did not incur any more debt and they did not have to sell their property. And we use this a lot. Also, and this is again, hear this one clearly. An option is a great tool to use when the owner doesn't want to sell. And Kim and I come across this a lot, as you're about to see. And maybe they want to sell, but not right now. So I talked to you about the house in Venice that we're buying second week of April. That's a case where they want to sell their house, but they didn't want to sell it in October, November, December, January, or February. They only wanted to sell once they found a house they wanted to buy, put it under contract, and they have a closing set for April the 15th. Now they're ready to sell. And so we used an option to secure that property, to take control of that property. And it worked really, really good. So what's the difference between an option and a pure option? You'll hear me refer to these two things. And simply put, an option is used, I call it an option when it's used with an additional tool or tools to put a deal together. So a lease with an option to purchase is a great example of two tools working together. Again, the lease gives the use of the property and the option gives you the right to buy. But when I'm going to use an option by itself, it's the only thing that's going to be involved. That's called a pure option. Jack Miller came up with that. So it's a pure option. There's no lease, there's no other tools, just the option, and it's being used by its lonesome. An option, people say, what is this thing? It's a creature of the state. It's contract law. And each state's contract laws are different. So your option agreement has to abide by your state's laws. So a good example is the option agreement I have was written for Georgia and works really great in Georgia. And when I was putting it together, I took it to my attorney, Lee Perkins, in Cartersville, Georgia, and we worked it over. And, it's just a solid contract for Georgia. But then when Kim and I started working in Florida, I took my option agreement to Chad Gates, who's in Sarasota, who's my attorney there, my real estate attorney there. And I had him look at it, and he had to make some changes because Florida state laws are different from Georgia state laws. So my option agreement got altered compared to what I had in Georgia. And in Georgia, when I'm securing an option, we use something called a deed of trust. In Florida, they use a mortgage. So I had to create a mortgage to secure my options in Florida. So and when you get my documents, if you come to the options class on April 22nd, 23rd, you'll get my documents. But understand, because they're a creature of state laws, you're going to want to take them to your real estate attorney and have them go through it and make changes to make sure they fit your state. What you're doing, where you're doing it. Just like what I had to do when I came down to Florida. And I've done an option in North Carolina. Same thing. We went to a real estate attorney and they did some modifications to the option agreement so it could be used in North Carolina. So it's unique to the state. Someone had a question?
Yes, so so we will be, I'm in Florida, we will be able to use your documents from Florida. Those are safe and good to use.
The answers are, I'm not an attorney. So I can't tell you that. I will tell you that during the course, you'll get the option and the security that I use in Georgia. You also would get a copy of the option and the mortgage I use in Georgia, and then the options and the mortgage I use in Florida. You'll get those documents. But if I were you, to be wise, I would take it to someone you know and trust and that really understands contract work in Florida and have them review it, because they may make a change. And if they do, call and let me know what it is. Because again, I'm always trying to get my documents better. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, so where do you find option deals? And before we really get started, as I told you at the beginning of this program, most of our option deals come from us door knocking. That's where I find them. But I'm a door knocker. I've been doing it for a living since I was 12 years old. I've been knocking on homeowners' doors and being invited in since I was 12 years old. It's all I've ever done, and I'm very comfortable doing that. But for some people, knocking on the door it'd be like going to a different planet, and it's too foreign. However you get in front of people, use that method, but get in front of people. And going back to answering the question, where do we find option deals? Owners who don't want to move, but are being forced to move. And you saw us, I'm going to reemphasize a slide I did earlier where I'm talking about this, but people always ask, where do I find these option deals? But again, an owner who doesn't want to move, but they're being forced to sell. Let's say they're in foreclosure. Or maybe an owner who does want to sell, but not right now, like the house in Venice we just talked about. Also, houses that need work, but the owner can't afford to do the repair. That's how Kim and I came to Venice in the first place. My friend Ed Taylor called me up and said, a hurricane just rolled through here, and there's blue tarps on pretty much every roof in Venice, Florida. Why don't you come down here and let's see what we can do? And the type of deals we could do down in Venice were people's insurance were not paying for new roofs. And because a lot of the houses down here have tile roofs, it's like $50,000 to $70,000 to replace a roof in Florida that has barrel tile roofs, and their insurance wasn't covering it, and people just don't have $70,000 sitting in the bank. So one of the agreements we agreed to do was we will pay to put a new roof on your house. Remember, they'd rather not have their house leak and rot. And I said, we'll pay to put a new roof on your house in exchange for right to buy your house at some point in the future. I mean, very straightforward deal. So that's what I mean by maybe someone needs work. Maybe they need a heat and air system, new garage doors, a gutter's hanging down. When you're driving through a neighborhood, I don't find reasons to not knock on someone's door. If I see something and I'm looking at it, I'm going, why is the blue tarp on the roof? Why are there window units in the front windows when that house should have central heat and air? I'm going to stop and knock and find out. So also folks who can't get money to do a loan, we just talked about that. And folks who want to own a home, they can't possibly afford for a price they can easily afford. And right there, you may get confused. And one of the deals we'll talk about on Tuesday night when we talk about advanced option work is when Kim and I sold our horse ranch in 2018. As I told you at the beginning of this call, Kim and I, in March of 2018, we moved into the motorhome. We moved into a motorhome, moved out of our horse ranch. And we've been in the motorhome for the last 7 years traveling the country. And we sold our motorhome 2 days ago. And we're coming out of the motorhome. We're moving this afternoon and a little bit tomorrow. But we'll be out of this house and we'll be buying our forever house again, second week of April. But anyway, when we sold our home in Georgia, the horse ranch, the way I sold it was we were asking $500,000 for the home. And we had someone that Kim wanted these people to buy her house and only these people. And she told me to come home and make the deal work. She didn't care if she got $1 a year from the house. She wanted them to own her home. And so I went home and they told me that they could not qualify for a $500,000 mortgage until they sold their house first. A contingency, an option, right? They, I couldn't sell to anybody but them, but they would only buy my house if they sold their house first. That's an option. So instead, what I said was, okay, you try to get a mortgage at 500, you couldn't get it. What could you get? And they could qualify for a $300,000 mortgage. So I sold them our $500,000 house for $300,000. Kid you not. Now, some of y'all know the story and some of you don't. And if you want to know how that deal worked out, you got to come to Tuesday night's meeting. That's where it'll be. I'll talk about Boyd Mountain Road, which is the horse ranch, and why we sold a $500,000 house for $200,000. And then we cover this deal in detail during the Power of Options class, March 22nd, 23rd. Okay. So also owners who are facing foreclosure, and you're about to see an example of that right now. So let's look at a pure option deal. So this is an option used by itself and how this works. So this was on Vaughn Road. This is a deal we did in 2024. And in this case, the owner was losing her house to foreclosure. And people always ask, how do we find the deal? That is Kim. That is the redhead right there at the door. And she went out and worked foreclosures. I was working on leasing up a rental. We went back to Cartersville to lease up a rental. And she said, well, I've got the afternoon off. I'm going to go knock on some doors and talk to some people in foreclosure. And this was one of those houses. And after she knocked on the door and she went and talked to them, she called me up and she goes, I think we have an option deal here. Can you come down and take a look? And so this is me taking this picture of her, but she found this by knocking on the door and they were in foreclosure. So this is how this deal was worked. It was due to go to an auction, foreclosure auction on July the 2nd, 2024. So that's what was happening. And Kim found it on June 19th, 2024. So this is about 2 weeks before this lady was going to lose her home. And basically, this is the conversation Kim had. There was no for sale sign in the yard. The lady was going to lose her house to foreclosure. And Kim, when she knocked on the door, she said, I'm a little bit confused. I saw someone told me that this house was listed in the paper for sale, but I don't see a for sale sign. And the boyfriend had actually answered the door and he said, yeah, the property's going to be sold at the auction, the foreclosure auction in 2 weeks. And Kim said, wow, I didn't know that, but maybe I can help. Are you wanting to sell? can we sit down and can we talk? And the boyfriend asked the owner of the property, his girlfriend, could we come in? And she said, yeah, if you don't mind the mess, I don't mind you coming in. So this is this is the living room. And it turns out the lady was a hoarder. Now, this looks bad enough, but the bedrooms were stacked with furniture. You can't get into any of the bedrooms. And when you go to where they were sleeping, there was a little bunny trail that gets to the bed itself, and it's surrounded by all kind of stuff. So she was a hoarder. And one of the things that Kim and I have learned over the decades we've been doing this is with hoarders, their possessions, their belongings are extremely important to them. And the thought of her losing the house in 2 weeks and being forced to move from the property and not knowing where she's going to go and not being able to afford anywhere else to go and having to abandon all her stuff was driving her crazy. And as it would anybody, she's going to lose all her stuff. And to a hoarder, their stuff is extremely valuable. So let's talk about this lady's situation. First of all, I told you that Kim knocked on the door. And this lady told us she was getting between 100 and she was getting, what was it, Kim? How many?
She said between
40 and 60. Yeah, 40 and 60 calls a day, whatever it was. She was getting a lot of phone calls, text messages, and emails every single day. She was getting flooded because she had made all the databases. And there was a lot of equity in this deal. So everybody, every investor from all over the country is calling her. And guess how many investors took the time and cared enough to go knock on her door? I'm not going to tell you that answer. I'm going to let her tell you the answer in 1 second. But I want you to be thinking this lady, there's a lot of equity in this deal. The lady needs help. She's facing foreclosures. She's getting all these phone calls. How many people took the time to knock on her door to see, can I help? I will tell you that Kim did. That's at least one. Now, what you're about to look at is the most powerful tool I use as a real estate investor. This is called a T-bar. And on the left-hand side, you can see where it says current position. The right-hand side, it says potential position. And when I sit down with a homeowner, I'm going to make a loan, or I'm talking to a borrower, or whatever I'm doing, you'll see me get a piece of paper and draw a T on it and write just this: current position, potential position. And I'm going to ask questions. I want to find out what's going on. So this is the T-bar I did with this homeowner when Kim asked me to come down. And again, people always ask, how do I know how to structure the deal? It's they tell me what they want done. And in telling me what they want done, that when they tell me where it hurts, that I know which tools may or may not work, or probably will work best to solve their problem. So let's look at what her problem is. Number one is she's faced foreclosures in 2 weeks. Number two is she does not want to move right now. And number three is she can't stop the foreclosure. She cannot afford, she didn't have the money for the arrears. Also, when it came to moving somewhere else, her mortgage payment with taxes and insurance was only $813 a month. Kim and I were in town to rent a trailer in our trailer park, which is 2 miles from this house. And trailer rent on a 1981 14 by 80 single wide mobile home is $1,300 a month. This lady has a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a 2-car garage, and she's only paying $813 with taxes and insurance. How does she afford to go anywhere else? And she kept saying over and over, right now, I just don't want to sell right now. And I don't want to move. And she said, I don't want to move countless times to me as I'm talking to her. So as I do, that's current position. But as I'm writing down what she's telling me, I do an arrow to the right-hand side. And this tells me the problems I need to solve. So when she said the foreclosure is in 2 weeks, arrow to the right-hand side, potential position. We'll stop the foreclosure. We've got to stop this foreclosure. Left-hand side, she doesn't want to move. Right-hand side, you don't have to move. Left-hand side, I can't afford to pay the arrears. Right-hand side, we'll pay the arrears for you. Left-hand side, I can't afford to live anywhere else. Right-hand side, you can stay and just make your monthly mortgage payment. Do you see that she's telling me what needs to be done? And over, I don't want to move. Over and over, I said to her, you don't have to move. If you accept the offer I make you, you will not have to move. T-bars. I don't know how to structure deals without knowing where the problem is. And this gives me that problem. So the owner was receiving between 40 and 60 phone offers every single day. Every single day while it was the house was in foreclosure, 40 to 60 offers. And every single offer she got was a big damn hammer offer. And you may be asking, what's the big damn hammer offer? And the big damn hammer offer is she has to move either before they buy the house or within 30 days of them buying the house. That was it. That was the only option she was getting. But what's the one thing she didn't want to do? What was the one thing she didn't want to do? She didn't
Bill,
want to move.
Not move.
Yep.
Bill, do you do the T-bar at the house?
Yes.
Okay,
And so
right there.
and so
Okay.
during the when I teach the seminar, you'll see it, the T-bar I wrote on a piece of paper. So again, I had to do it for the program. I had to type it up on this thing, but all through the Power of Options class or the thing with all the deals you see me do, you'll see the handwritten T-bar I did sitting in the living room. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yep. So now let's go to how we creatively structure the offer. Okay. How do we put this offer together? Based on the T-bar, this is what I did. First thing I said to her is, you don't have to move. How do you think this made her feel? I mean, think about it. How do you think this made her feel when I said, you don't have to move? It was everything to her. It was the thing she kept asking for. Number two, we'll pay your arrears and stop the foreclosure. Now, I want y'all to think about something. Every offer she was getting was about $160,000. House is worth $300,000. And every offer she got was about half that, so $150,000, $160,000. 50 cent on the dollar deals. The big damn hammer was coming to her over and over again. You may be thinking, wow, what are the arrears? How far behind is she on this house? $7,600. That was it. That was her total arrearage. $7,600. If she could come up with that, the foreclosure stopped. So we agreed to pay the arrears. It stops the foreclosure. And in exchange for me doing this, allow her to stay where she is and to stop the foreclosure auction, what I asked for is a secured exclusive right to buy her house sometime in the next 30 years, subject to her mortgage. So you're seeing yet another subject to deal at work. So Kim and I do a lot of subject to deals, and people say, how do you get subject to deals? We make subject to offers, a lot of them. Okay, we will not exercise our right to buy this property for the first 8 years. And let me explain this for a second. What she said, I said, you don't have to move. I said, but one day you're going to want to move. Do you know about how long you want to stay in the house? And she said, if I could be here for 8 years, that would be perfect. So I'm going to have the exclusive right to buy her house anytime in the next 30 years. However, I'm promising not to exercise that right in the first 8 years. And I know what you're thinking. Well, what if she doesn't make a mortgage payment? What if she doesn't take care of the property? What if she doesn't pay her property taxes? What if she doesn't pay her insurance? In a minute, I'll let her tell you what happens in that case. So the strike price, and this is going to kill you, on a $300,000 house, we have the right to buy it for $72,832. How about that? All because Kim went and knocked on her door. If Kim hadn't gone to knock on the door or just made a phone call or hadn't cared enough to sit down and ask her questions, if we hadn't done the T-bar, none of this deal would have happened. We would have walked right past it. And the way we came up with the strike price is her mortgage balance at closing was $80,452. That was the total mortgage balance on this $300,000 house. And her arrears were $7,620. And we just did the math. Here's your mortgage balance minus the arrearage. That gave us a $72,832 purchase price. When we buy it anytime in the next 30 years, That's it. And we can't exercise it for the first 8. Would you do this deal? Is this a good deal? So why did the owner accept our $72,823 offer? There was a subject to deal over the $160,000 all cash offer she was getting. Someone please tell me, why did she take ours over anybody else's?
Because
They
she
gave her
could
what
stay in the
really needed,
house.
which was
She
not
could
to
stay in-
move.
Yep.
It solved her problem and got her the money she needed without having to leave her house.
I didn't give her any money.
Well,
She
got
ain't
her
all
the
about the money.
situation.
She never got a dime. I paid up the arrears. That didn't go into her hands. We handed the money to when we bought the house. When we bought the option. When we bought the option, the attorney wired the money to her lender, and that caught up everything. So she didn't have to move. This is why. This is what the T-bar pointed out to me. So remember, sometimes the why is much more important than the how much. And I want you to look at a realtor's contract or look at the contract that you're using right now. Is there anything in there anywhere that talks about the why? Or is it just about the how much? If all you're doing is talking about someone's how much, you're missing it. Our job as real estate investors is not to buy, sell, or rent houses. Our job is to solve people's real estate problems. And the only way you can solve someone's real estate problems is to understand the problems. And the best way to do that is meet with them face to face. If you can't do face to face, do Zoom, but not text and not email. Get face to face with them somehow and ask the questions.
So, Bill, I got a question for you. She at one point failed to make those mortgage payments. What happens if that happens again?
Hang on one second. I'm going to let her tell you. I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to let her tell you. Hang on. Okay. So we talked about why she took this deal, but I want you to hear in her words why she took this deal. And that's the lady. That's the lady we bought the house from. And we met you last Wednesday, a week ago, and you were facing foreclosures for July the 2nd on the courthouse steps here in Bartow.
Right.
And when your foreclosure notice hit the paper, how many calls were you getting from people calling you about your house?
60 to 100 a day. I turned it off at 11 o'clock and I turned it back on 4 hours later. I had 60 missed calls.
And when you ever talked to any of them, what was the solution to your problem? What solution did they give?
Buying my house and me being out within 30 days.
One after another, after another, after another. How many people knocked on your door?
2.
2. Okay, so Kim was one of them.
And the other one was, I don't remember his name.
Okay.
There's too many other names to remember.
And what was his solution?
His solution was to sell as is with, I think, 125 grand, and we pay off everybody out of that, and I wound up. He said you will wind up with 20 grand. I'm positive of that.
But you would have to move and all your furniture, because you have a lot of furniture in the house.
Everybody's.
Yeah, you have everybody's furniture in your house. Why, when Kim came to your door, why did you let him in? Or why did you let her in? Why did you invite her in?
I thought, well, if she don't mind the house the way it looks, I feel bad. I'm not getting up. I thought, well, let's see what she has to say, because I had been saying, for some reason, I'm not going with these other people. There's a reason. And I have my faith, and I thought something better is coming along. I just didn't know what it was and when it was.
Okay. So that talks about why, when she invited in, how did we get this deal? And you heard her say only one other investor took the time to knock on the door. One. And all he did is make her 150 or 100, no, $120,000 offer. $120,000 offer. That was his offer, and she had to move. This was such a good deal for us, and it was such a good deal for her. But again, we knocked on the door, talked to her, and again, she's, you can hear it. She's a nice lady, and I have a lot more of this interview that we'll do during the Power of Options seminar on March 22nd, 23rd. And again, you'll see all the paperwork involved in this deal, everything that really happened, because I can just kind of touch on this right now and nothing more than that. So remember, our job as real estate investors is not to buy, sell, or rent houses. It's to help people solve their real estate problems. And that's what we did here. We did it in the way that she laid out for us. And what you're looking at here is the option agreement. I mean, this is the actual option agreement. Again, you're not seeing the full thing, but you will see it during the seminar. But if you look at number one, the option was recorded in the courthouse. That's the stamp showing that it's in deed book. And if you want to see the full option agreement, go to Bartow County, Georgia. Go to deed book 3652, page 816. You'll see the full option agreement because it's in the courthouse. And this was an attachment to the security deed. That's why you see number two, which is Exhibit B. And then number three is this is the option agreement. And right below that, the line says that the optioner is granting the optionee the exclusive irrevocable right to purchase right an option to purchase the real property that we're talking about. But that's what this is. Now you're looking at the security deed. And if you look at number one, that is book and page number where the security deed starts. And then you're looking at the security deed we're using to secure the option to the property. And that way, if anyone does a title search, it's going to pop up. And if you look there in the middle of the page, you'll see my phone number and my address, because I don't want to hide. I want to make sure that I'm found. So if she goes to refinance or sell this property, they're going to do a title search and they're going to find this document. And they're going to say, okay, we need to find out what this is. And I get the phone call. That's why this is a secured in the courthouse. That's why I do it this way. So I get that phone call. And it's happened to me a couple of times where someone's gone to refinance or someone went to sell. And everything stopped because this popped up and I got the phone call. So let's talk about the consideration. And I said that I did not give her any cash. So this is the consideration. So in other words, she gave me the right to buy her house. And what did I give her? What I did was I agreed to pay the note arrearage of $7,620.52, and I stopped the foreclosure. But that money was sent to her lender. It was not given to her. And it stopped the foreclosure that was due to happen on July the 2nd, 2024. So now let's talk about what happens if I exercise the option. Now, when I did this, I wasn't confident of the numbers. I knew roughly where they were, but I did not have the exact numbers. So I used a formula instead of numbers. And there's the formula. So what will be the strike price? What will I pay for this house when and if I exercise my option to buy it? And it's going to be the mortgage balance of what the mortgage balance was on June the 26th, 2024, minus the amount of the optioneer's arrearage, which you just saw. And that's it. It's a formula. And that's going to be my strike price. It's kind of like when I said early in this call that let's say it's going to be my strike price will be the then balance of the mortgage. There's no way I can know what the mortgage balance will be 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. So I'll just put down the then balance of the mortgage. So what happens, and I got asked this question, what happens if the optioner doesn't keep her promises? What happens if she doesn't make her mortgage payments, doesn't pay the insurance, doesn't pay the property taxes, doesn't take care of the property? What's going to happen? Let's find out.
Okay. So one of the things we talked about is I said that I cannot buy your house for the first 8 years. But we also talked about that you promise to make your mortgage payments on time from now on. And if you fail to do that, what happens?
You can tell me bye-bye.
Yeah, I can exercise my option immediately. What about if you don't pay your property taxes?
I'm gone.
I get to exercise the option. How about the insurance?
Same thing.
Same thing. Okay.
So I wanted y'all to hear what she said. She goes, "I'm out of here. I have to move. That I can't stay here anymore. That you're gonna exercise the option. You're gonna buy the property." You have to understand before I do a deal with someone, whether I'm borrowing or lending or I'm buying their property, I'm selling them the property, I'm renting to them, they're renting to me. I want to make sure that everybody understands the deal. That's very important to me. And yes, I do record him. That was being recorded at Lee Perkins' office as we were doing the closing. I wanted her to explain the agreement. And when, during the seminar, the Power of Options seminar we're about to teach, you're going to see a number of videos from the people I'm doing the deal with, talking about why are they doing the deal? And also, I'm having them explain the deal. So, why are they doing it? I want you to explain the deal to me. And a good example is on the house we're buying in Venice. I sat down with the owner who's selling us the house. This was on Tuesday of this week. And I shot a video with him and I said, "Can you please explain a subject to deal? Why are what is this? Why are we doing the deal this way?" And he explained what a subject to deal is beautifully. No notes, no stuttering. And I also asked him why we did an option agreement. Why did you agree to grant me an option for the right to buy your property? And he explains it. You'll see that at the seminar. So I want to use I record these things because sometimes people's memory fails or they're like, no, I don't remember him saying that. That's why I record these things. With a tenant, when they move in, our houses are beautiful, well taken care of. The grass is freshly cut. There's not dust in the house. And a couple times I've had to do an eviction of someone, sometime after they moved in, and they're like, "Oh, the house was dirty and it had bugs and it had an infestation and the yard was overgrown. That's why the yard's overgrown now." And all I do is I play the video for the judge of them saying how beautiful the house is on the day they're doing the lease up. That's why I do this. It's
I
just a
have a
really
question
safe thing to do.
about
Yeah.
what would happen if the lady that was on the video, what would happen if, for example, in year two, she calls you and she says, "I'm ready to move and you can exercise your option," and you're not ready to exercise the option? Let's say maybe the market is upside down or who knows, any kind of reason. You're not ready to exercise it and she's ready to move out. What would you do?
That is a really great question. And the answer to that is pretty simple. She can't tell me when to buy it. So in this case, I have a 30-year option to buy it. I decide in the next 30 years when I'm going to exercise the option and buy the property. She cannot make me buy the property. Okay. So with that said, if she comes to me 2 years from now and says, "I want you to buy the property, I need you to do this right now," and I say no, then that stops everything. And she cannot sell to anybody else, only to me. But we would have discussed this and I would have videotaped her saying that she can't come to me and say, "You got to sell it." But let's say in this case, um, now this is a fat deal, so I can exercise in 2 years, but let's say it was a very thin deal. Then what might happen is I go to her and say, "Listen, I do not have to exercise now, but if you want me to exercise now before I'm ready, let's look at the strike price or let's look at owner financing or let's look at what we've agreed to and let's do some modifications that allows me to do this deal now. And if we can come to an accord, I'll go ahead and exercise now. But if we can't, then I will not buy right now. And I'm just going to, I'll buy the house when I'm ready to buy." Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
That's the discussion. And again, all these discussions are had before I go into a deal. I want to make sure they know the ramifications of what we're agreeing to. I just want them to know, and I want them to explain it to me on video without notes so I know that they know. But also, if there's ever a problem or they want to go to an attorney later on and say that I took advantage of them, I want to be able to play this video for whoever wants to see it of them explaining the deal so they know I was not covering someone up. I want daylight on everything I do. Okay?
They could also sell it subject to your option, although somebody might not be crazy enough to do.
Well, yeah, if they do sell the house without me knowing about it, whoever's buying the house is buying it subject to my option that's in the way. And you better believe there's a good chance as soon as I find out about this, if I go by the house and there's somebody in the house all of a sudden, then I'm going to be ready to exercise the option quickly. And one of the things I'm able to do, and we'll talk about this a little bit on Tuesday, is what happens when that happens. Can I foreclose from an option? If they're not doing what they say, what can I do to solve the problem? And again, we'll touch on that on Tuesday. So in real estate, it's critical that all parties have a clear understanding of the accord. That's why I don't mind videotaping, and I spend a lot of time with someone making sure they understand. A good example is on the property that we're buying here in Venice in a month, basically. With that property, I just had my 17th face-to-face meeting with the homeowners. 17th face-to-face meeting. How often do you meet face-to-face with sellers? I don't mean realtors. I mean the person who owns the property. And some people say, well, I'd never meet with them. Or I meet with them one time. I won't meet with someone twice. You're missing deals. Okay, so yes, I video the folks and I record everything, as I said before, because I want to make sure they understand it. And they don't, we're going to stop and we're going to go over it again, but I want to make sure they understand it. So I have this option on this road, on this house on Vaughn Road. Again, the property's worth $300. I have the right to buy it anytime in 30 years for $72,000 and some change. I can't exercise it for the first 8 years, but when I do exercise it, I can buy it subject to her mortgage that has a current mortgage balance of $72,000. That's the strike price. Can I wait and exercise this option after 8 years? And the answer is yes. So can I wait and exercise this option after 25 years? The answer is yes. She can't make me exercise my option until I'm ready to go. Can I sell the option today to someone else? Who in here would want to buy this option from me? Remember, I only have $7,600 involved in this deal. So might one of you want to buy this option from me? I mean, this is a great deal. And most of you are going to say, yeah, I'd do that. So can I use this option as collateral? The answer is yes. So if I go to a lender and say, I'll put this option up as collateral, yeah, of course, I can borrow some money on it. And can I trade the option? Let's say I find someone in Florida that has a house I really like. Might I give them this option in exchange for the deed to the property they have in Florida? And we may have to balance it out, someone giving someone money or a note to go back to balance the deal out. But might I take a property in Florida in exchange for this option that's up in Georgia? That could happen. So what if the optioner doesn't want me to exercise? So let's say at year 8, I'm ready to exercise the option. What if she's not ready for me to exercise the option? What if she wants to stay there another couple years? Can I sit back and can we modify the strike price downward? So I'm giving her something she wants, but she has to give me something that I want. So I just want you to see, but though I have an option on this property, it's a very fluid thing, and I have a lot of ways to work with the option agreement. So today, is there any deal structuring tool in your creative deal structuring toolbox that will allow you to structure this deal? Do you have this? Can you, if you sat down, if you knocked on this door and you were talking to this homeowner, could you have done this deal? Could you have? And if the answer is no, what's not being able to structure a deal like this, an option deal like this? What's that costing you every year? How many properties are you walking by because the owner doesn't want to sell or doesn't want to sell right now? Or maybe they would like to, they need some funds, but they don't want to sell their home. Or all the different ways that, all the different reasons why you would use an option that we've covered today. If your answer is no, I don't know how to do this type of deal, what is it costing you every single year? When are you going to learn? When are you going to learn to say, hey, listen, I want to learn how to do option deals? Now, remember, I learned about option deals in 1999, but it wasn't until 2001. It was 2 years before I did my first option deal. And we did 2 option deals in 2021 or 2001. But it took me the 2 years to gain in confidence and study about it. I took Jack's class twice before I went forward. But look at what it's done for us since then. Since we started using options as a tool Look at what it's done for Kim and me since then. So let's look at the creative lessons we learned from Vaughn Road. Number one is door knocking works. And you saw the value of a T-bar. Without that T-bar, I would not have known how to structure this deal. And sometimes owners who are being forced to sell don't want to sell. She was a great example of this. And sometimes a pure option is the best tool to use, which is the case in this case. And an option is not a loan. I paid up the arrears, $7,620. She does not owe me the money back. There was not a loan of money. There's no interest rate. There's no payments. I acquired the right to buy her house, and to acquire that right, I paid up the arrears. And it pays to learn advanced creative deal making, because if I hadn't sat in Jack's class in 1999 and learned about options, I never would have known this. But think of all the option deals Kim and I would not have done from 1999 through today. We would not be getting the house of our dreams in a month, because I wouldn't have known how to do an option to secure this thing up when we first started working on that deal back in October of 2024. Look at what we would have missed. Okay, so does it really pay to learn deal making? And the answer is, let's look at this deal. Let's look at the numbers of this deal. So the fair market value of this property today is $301,000. Our strike price, our purchase price for this house when we do buy the property is going to be $72,832. That means the captured equity on this deal is right now $228,000. And as the property goes up in value, if it goes up in value, that number only grows. And if we were to exercise our option today and acquire this property, if for some reason, she said, I want you to do the deal right now, we're moving somewhere else, the market rent for this house is $2,200 a month. But the mortgage payment that we would take over subject to is only $813, and that's with taxes and insurance. And yes, because I wouldn't live in the house, the taxes would be higher, property taxes would be higher, and the insurance would be higher, but not by a lot. That means the potential cash flow in this house right now is about let's call it $1,300. It's about $1,300 we can make a month on this house if we were to exercise today. Yeah, Kim.
Problems or questions?
I helped her. She had a problem. She was losing the house. She was going to have to move in 2 weeks. She was going to have to leave all her stuff behind. She couldn't afford the rent on our mobile home. She only has $1,400 a month coming in on Social Security. She couldn't afford to live in our mobile home. I helped her. We've agreed to the price of $72,000.
IRA.
Would I use this in my IRA?
Your self-directed.
In the self-directed IRA? And the answer is, I could use this in the self-directed IRA. And I just did a seminar with Larissa Green, and you'll find that interview on Advanta's website, where we talked about just that. But the reason why I did not do this deal in my self-directed IRA is because we need the tax write-offs. Kim and I used to have 35 single-family houses, and when we moved into our motorhome in 2016-17, we sold off 28 of our rentals. At one of those houses we sold for cash. 27 we sold with owner financing. So we went from being landlords to being note holders and getting paid on that. Because we thought the mortgage was the real estate market was going to take a hit in 2018 or 19, which it didn't happen. But anyway, we went down to 7 houses. We're now back up to 15 on our way. When we buy the house in Cartersville in April, we'll have 16 rentals, and I'm bringing 2 more trailers into our trailer park. That's going to take us to 18 rentals, and I need to get 2 more rentals on top of that, which will take us to 20.
I have a question.
Wait. The question was, would I do this in the IRA? I needed the tax write-offs that come with rental property. So in this case, I did not do it in my IRA, because if it's in the IRA, I do not get any write-offs. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you. So if you have a trust, let's say for your family, would you, every time you do an option, would you go to your lawyer and tell them, put the option in the trust, or how do you protect that that option? Or until you buy the property, that's when you put it in the trust?
Okay, that's going to be more of an estate planning question. And so you know what we do, that particular option, yes, it's it's in a trust, I'm sorry, it's that particular option is not in a trust. That particular option is owned by my LLC, my investment trust, my investment account, which is an LLC. So you can think of think of the option as holding a note. You made a loan to someone, and now you're the lender, and you hold that note. Maybe you hold it into a trust, maybe you hold it in an LLC, maybe you own it personally. So that's really going to be up to you and the people that are helping you with your entity work. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
I have a question too.
Go ahead.
Do you have access to her mortgage account so you make sure she's making the payments?
The answer is yes. We got a power of attorney, and we do have access where we can go check to make sure she's making her mortgage payment. And the first of every month, Kim goes to her, look at her account to make sure that her mortgage got paid. And as you heard her say, she knows that if she misses a mortgage payment, that Kim and I will exercise the option immediately, and she will have to move from the property because this will be her second chance, right? And I told her, I said, if you don't make that mortgage payment, we will exercise the option. We will buy the property and you will have to move from the property. And I made sure she understood that. And you heard her say, I'm out of here. If I don't make the mortgage payment, I've got to move out. I've got to go. And you heard her say it and you saw her even do, I'm out of here. That's because that's what I told her would happen. And so when I asked her what happens if you don't make your mortgage payment or you don't pay the insurance or you don't pay the property taxes, she's out of here. Does that answer your question, Lee?
A further question is, would you really do that, or would you actually take double payments of what you paid for her, or something
The
like
answer
that?
is, let's say she doesn't make a mortgage payment, would I really do that? And the answer is yes, I really would do that. We
Okay.
made an accord. She and I came to an agreement. She was going to lose her house in 2 weeks. She was going to leave all her stuff behind. We did what we promised we would do. And when I go into an agreement with someone, I expect them to do what they promised they would do. So if you loaned me money, Lee, and I promised to pay you back, you would expect me to live up to your promise because you did your promise, which was you loaned me the money. I now have your money. You expect me to pay on time, but if I break the promise, if I don't do what I promise you I'm going to go do, Lee, would you not want your money back? And the answer is yes. And if I wouldn't pay you your money back, then you would foreclose, and the property is the collateral for the promise. Okay?
Thank you.
And I don't want you to think I'm some type of hard ass. It's just that when I do a deal with someone, when we reach an accord, I expect them to do what they promise because I'm going to do what I promise. But if they can't do what they promise, would I have a discussion with them? Yes. Might there be a way we can work it out? Yes. Am I likely to exercise my option? Yes. And
Very nice. Thank you.
that said, Kim and I have been doing option work since 2001. Well, I don't want to. I'll talk about what I was just going to say. I'm going to talk about that at the seminar. I don't want to talk about that here. I want to keep moving. Okay. So,
Can I ask one quick question?
Yeah.
How do you handle the insurance? Because the insurance that's in place now covers her, the owner, plus the mortgage company. So how is your equity insured?
how is the mortgage company protected?
Well, they would be as a loss payee, would they not?
Right. So you have her lender down as loss payee. Who else do you think is listed there as loss payee?
Okay. I got you. You're added.
I was added to the insurance policy.
So you would just simply add yourself as an additional loss payee on the existing policy?
I would add the optionee So I'm the optionee, but however it is I'm on there is optionee because a lot of times I'm going to use a trust, or in this case, the LLC. It's listed down as lost payee, number two.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure. Other questions?
Bill, options are a very common instrument on financial markets, puts, calls, all that other kind of stuff.
Correct.
Have you ever reviewed the terms of those option contracts to see if anything is applicable in the situations that you are using it in real estate?
I have not. And I don't know the first thing about options when it comes to stocks. Now, Kim and I do own stocks, but I've never done any of that type of work. I'm a big believer in dollar cost averaging, which means you pick companies that you really, really like and you buy stock in them. But I'm not here to buy and sell stock. I buy stock and keep stock because I like the company a lot. And when I don't like the company anymore, I'll sell the stock and buy another stock. So I don't know how it works in the stock market. And where I learned my option work was from Jack Miller primarily. And then I've also learned a lot about options from Pete Fortunato. So I got my education from them as it pertains to real estate, single family houses mainly. And that's what I use. That's where I learned. Other questions?
Bill, can I go back to my insurance? You said you would have yourself added as a lost payee or your trust, but there would not be enough coverage, more than likely, to cover the existing mortgage balance plus your equity.
Actually, her insurance is for the replacement cost of the house.
Okay.
And so to rebuild that house is like $340,000 or $350,000. That's the insurance she's covering that's the insurance she's carrying on the property.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Remember, you saw the equity that we picked up here, and you see the cash flow that we could get today if we exercise the option. And this cost me $7,620 plus the closing cost to have this option recorded. So I probably have a total of maybe about $9,000 in this deal. And I would say that that's a really good return on my investment. It's a really holding this option is a good investment for us. I want to show you another.
So,
Go ahead.
Bill, you said you do about 12 of those a year, and you also like to eat, I'm sure, and drive around, put fuel in the motorhome, etc. So if you're doing those kinds of deals, you're really not generating any cash flow out of that one. So thinking back to where you were first getting started, and you might have 4 or 5 homes that you're renting and creating a cash flow. You start throwing $7 to $15 to $30,000 a piece at these kinds of deals. Where do you go for those kinds of that type of funds? Because you're not in an ownership position. It's not like you go grab your own mortgage. You need to go find money to do those deals, 10 of them a year, we'll say. What's a good source for that?
Okay. We have about 20 minutes left, and we may go a little bit over. But to answer your question, I said, since Kim and I started in investing back in the 90s, we did 10 to maybe 13 deals a year. Those were flips. We bought rental property and kept it. I did lending. So we did it's not just 10 to 13 option deals a year. It's a combination. So again, we flipped properties and assigned contracts in order to generate cash. We bought rental properties that would cash flow, so that would build our net worth and allow us to be financially free. I did option work when it was required, but let's say I did not have the money to do it, I would bring someone else into my deal that did have that money, and I would split the deal with them.
Hey, Bill, I have a question if you don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah, so my understanding that you live in Florida and you have quite a few investment properties in Georgia. From a distance, I would like to know how you manage these properties in terms of maintenance or any issue that arises.
Good question. First of all, Kim and I go back fairly regular. We go back maybe 5, 6, 7 times. One of us is back there. Good example is I'm going to be leading Ski RIA April the 1st. We're flying out. We'll be in Utah at Park City, and a number of investors join me out there, and we ski during the day and talk about deal structure at night. And I need to get my ski outfit. Also, I'm teaching a seminar on March 22nd, 23rd. Guess where all my speaker equipment is? It's in a storage unit in Cartersville. So Kim and I will drive up, or Kim will drive up, or I'll drive up to Cartersville, and we'll get the equipment to bring it back down. But while we're there, we'll get some money out of the bank. We'll go by and inspect the properties. I have an office manager there named Tara Whitlock that she drives by regular. I also have investor friends who are there and they know my properties, and they will drive by one and say, "Hey, that looks really good." Stephen Blaylock, who's a friend of mine, sent me a text the other day and just said, "Hey, if you got a property that needs looked at, just let me know." So that's how we take care of them. And when a tenant called last week while we were on a cruise, and her toilet flapper wasn't staying down and the toilet was leaking, meaning the water was running in the bowl. And we called our maintenance guy. Kim called the maintenance guy. He went out, he fixed it for $75, and the problem got solved. And we were on a cruise ship in the middle of the Caribbean. Oh, Kim said we were actually we're in Panama. We went to Panama um, for a while, for like 3 or 4 weeks, whatever. I forgot what it was, but we were in Panama, the country of Panama for a while. Anyway, does that answer your question?
Yes, Bill, thank you so much.
Okay, sounds good. Let's go to a tactical. This is a different type of option because some people, and this kind of goes along with the question you asked, is how do you get right now money? I want to show you an option, a way to do an option where you're getting right now money. And this is called a tactical option. So what if you need right now money? This is a different way you can do an option. So this is a very short-term option. Usually it's going to be for less than 90 days. What if you need right now money? And with that, we're going to be looking at a short-term option, and this is used when the seller does want to sell. I showed you a couple options when they didn't want to sell. I also showed you an option when someone wants to lease a property, but this is the case the owner does want to sell, but they did not want to use a realtor. And so this is what I use when the seller doesn't, they don't want to deal with realtors. They don't want to meet with people who want to buy their house. They just want it gone. So in this case, this guy had heard of me and Kim, called us up. This is in Resaca, Georgia. And with this one, the property was specialized. It was horse property. It was on 5.6 acres, had a barn and had pasture. The house was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath horse ranch. The owner wanted a very fast sale, and he just, for whatever reason, did not want to work with realtors. He had worked with realtors in the past and didn't like it. And the fair market, the value of the property, Kim and I thought was about 100,000. Turns out the fair market value was about 120, but we looked and said, okay, about 100,000. And the owner, when I talked to him, said, as long as I can walk away with $90,000, I'm happy. I said, so if you make $90,000 when your property sells, you're happy, and we can make everything above that. And he said, yeah, no problem. And I explained, that Kim and I are not realtors. So the way we were able to make this property work was he gave us the option to buy the property for $90,000. That's the number he came up with. And you're looking at the flyer that Kim came up with. This is what she drew up, put it in a flyer box out front, put our signs in the yard. And so our goal was to market this property and find someone who wanted to buy our option, not the house, our option agreement. So then they would have the right to buy the property. And so the owner of the property said, everything above $90,000 strike price, we get to keep. And so less than 30 days later, because we had a horse ranch and we knew horse people, we were able to find someone, and they bought the property on January 20th, 2006. This is going to be the HUD-1 when we sold the property. And if you look at the arrows, you will see that what we got was an assignment fee. And our company we used back then, that we use now, or used back then, was North Georgia Real Estate Investors. But they paid us an assignment fee of $5,997. So the buyer exercised our option that we assigned to them, and they paid $98,000 total And from that, we got $5,997, and the owner got what they wanted, which was $90,000. So here's us getting our check. We had maybe 10 hours worth of work into this deal, which is like $600 an hour. So you can use options to generate fast cash. That's called a tactical option. Any questions on that?
Hey, Bill, will you go back to that screen with the actual paperwork, the one before that? Yeah, thanks.
Oh, this one?
Hey, Bill, I want to get a better understanding of this transaction here. So this tactical option that you just talked about, you put it on the contract as an option, and can you be more specific around that? And
Yes,
and
they
the option gives you the rights for you to find another buyer.
no. Okay, so this is what was agreed to. The owner said, if I make $90,000, I'm happy. So we got an option from him, and the strike price was $90,000. So we agreed to buy the house from him for $90,000. Remember, we're not obligated. It's an
Yeah, but can
option.
you pause there for a second? You said you agreed to buy it. Does that mean you're gonna put it, you buy it outright, or you do an option? That's where I'm lost at.
An option gives us the right to buy the property.
Mm-hmm. So the option, well, so you actually buy the property when you get the buyer.
No, he had a house that he wanted to sell. He didn't want it anymore.
Mhm.
He said, if I can get $90,000 when this property closes, and he didn't want to list it with a realtor, he said, I'm happy. And so he granted me the right, the exclusive right to buy his house. And I think it's anytime in the next 90 days for $90,000. And then Kim and I marketed the house. Again, we're horse people too. And we went to some of the boarding barns around, and we found someone. We were marketing the house for like 95.5, as you can see there on the flyer. And we found someone who wanted to buy the property. And the deal we worked out is we assigned the buyers our option agreement. So we could buy the house anytime in 90 days, and we could pay $90,000. That's what the buyers worked from, was our option agreement. But for them to get the option agreement, we assign them our option agreement. That's what, when you see the arrows down below,
Mhm.
you'll see where it says the assignment of our right to buy the property. And they paid us $5,997 to take over our option. Then they exercised the property and they bought the property, and the owner of the property walked away with $90,000. The buyers paid basically $98,000 for the house. And it turned out it was worth about $125,000 or $130,000. Everybody got what they wanted.
And what about if you put this on the contract as an option and can't find a buyer? Do you go ahead and buy it?
The option expires. Well, I could
Uh-huh.
have,
Uh-huh.
but I wouldn't have. The option would have expired, and then he would have had to go do something else to sell the property.
Oh man, that's brilliant. I love it.
We had no
Thank
money in
you.
this.
Mhm.
We had no money. All we had did, the consideration, option consideration, was we agreed to market the house and try to find someone who would buy the house. That was the consideration. And if we
Right.
had found someone to buy the house, the option would have expired and we were done.
Mhm. That's brilliant. Love it.
Excuse
Thank
me,
you.
how would you know how much are the closing costs? Like, how would he get 90 clear? Because there's some costs for him also.
Yes, there are. In this case, I went to my attorney and said, roughly, what is this going to cost to close? And the people who were buying the house, they came in with all cash. They did not have to go get a mortgage.
Okay, so you knew exactly how much his closing costs were gonna be.
The closing costs didn't matter. What would happen is the buyers had to make sure that he walked away with $90,000. That's the agreement I made with him when I got the option agreement. I assigned them my option agreement, so he had to get the $90,000. Whatever they paid above that, they paid above that. In addition, they had to pay us, me and Kim, $5,997 as an assignment fee. That was part of the cost of him buying the property.
And how much you pay for your assignment fee? Oh, you did.
And I'm looking on the HUD one right now, and if you look at lines 504, he actually got a mortgage from Mortgage Street Mortgage for $86,240. and the rest he came out of pocket. So he did get a mortgage to buy this house, and then the rest he made up with cash. The buyer made up with cash.
And how much you paid for this option?
I didn't pay anything for it. I agreed to market the property
Okay.
and find a buyer.
How did you come, how did you come up with your option assignment fee, the $59.97?
That was my question too.
I think Kim said I'd like to make $5,997 by assigning this contract to the people we assign the contract to.
Love a man who listens to his wife.
Yep. And we've been married for more than 29 years, and I listen to my wife. Okay, so this is
Hey,
the
Bill, Sean O'Connor, I have a quick question. I would normally do that transaction under a purchase contract, which I would then assign. Now you're using an option. What's the pro or con to using one versus another?
because a lot of states nowadays are you're seeing when you try to sign a contract, they're trying to say that you're a realtor and that you really don't have an interest in the property. When I have an option to buy a property, I have an interest in the property. And so I'm not representing myself as a realtor any shape or form. I'm saying I have this property and I'm willing to assign you my right to buy the property in the form of an option. It's just the way I do it. I learned it from Jack Miller. I just copied him. I didn't need to reinvent the wheel.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
And Bill, would you, I'm sorry, excuse me, Sean, would you provide us, I guess, the contract with the agreement of this option? This tactical option?
Would I do what?
Would you provide the document or the contract for this,
I would provide the option
tactical-
agreement. Yeah, I assigned the option over to the buyers, and now the buyers were holding the option agreement.
Okay, thanks.
Bill, one last question. Is there any recommended, like I know you said this is how much Kim wanted for the assignment fee, but have you ever set it up in a way where it's like a certain percent of the sale, either by the seller you're buying from or what the buyer's getting it from? Do you ever do something like that? Or
Jack Miller would do it where he can make 10% when assignment fee, whatever the assignment fee was, it was always 10% over.
okay, and that's on the contract you drew with the original seller, not on the new price that's being paid by the new buyer, correct?
Correct. That was
Okay.
the original option agreement I have with the property owner. And just know that Kim and I didn't do a lot of tactical options in our lifetime. Now and again, someone would come to us and say, I just want you to sell the house. You just, you got to understand that Kim and I, when we were in Georgia, we started a real estate investors association group in 2001, and that grew to 2,400 people. And I also wrote a weekly real estate investing newspaper column that was syndicated in Georgia. That was a weekly column that I wrote for 13 years. And so people knew who we were. And I door knocked a 5-mile circle around the Cartersville, Georgia Walmart. And it took me 3 months to get around the circle. And then I just would go around the circle again. That's 4 times a year. That's 40 times in 10 years. That's 80 times in 20 years. People just knew who we were because we were very tight to that area.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I want to move forward to the next one. And this goes to what we talked about with property taxes. So this is a case on William Street where the owner was going to be forced to sell his house, didn't want to, going to be forced to sell his house because property taxes had gone up so much. And so I want you to see how I dealt with that, because there was a question early in today's call where someone talked about New Jersey and how do I work with property taxes there. So this is that deal. So I was out door knocking. Just simple. I was just going through a neighborhood, no for sale sign in the yard. And when I knocked on the door, I said, this is going to sound crazy. I love your home. I love the street. I love the neighborhood. Kim and I want to own a home here. Do you know anybody who's thinking about selling? And the owner said, kind of glumly, yeah, me. I'm going to probably be forced to sell real soon. And when he said that, I kind of thought he meant about foreclosure. But I didn't know. And I just asked why. Great question to ask always is why. And he says, well, because I can't afford the property taxes anymore. When we bought the house, I could afford it easily, but property taxes have skyrocketed. Who knew that was going to happen? And insurance has skyrocketed, but it's the property taxes that are killing me. And And I said, well, do you want to sell the house? He goes, no, I don't want to sell. This is like the home of, I want to live in until maybe one day when we move to Florida. And I looked at him and I said, listen, would you trade me a glass of sweet tea if I can show you how you can continue owning your home and never pay property taxes ever again? And the guy says, I never have to pay property taxes again. I said, never. He goes, is this some type of con? I said, not a con, but it will cost you a glass of sweet tea. And he's like, come on in. So I went in the house, sat down with he and his wife. So I want you to see how this deal was structured. And again, I promised everybody we'd be done by 12, but we've taken some good questions, and I'm not trying to get to an end on this when we don't have to all go home, but we have to get a call at 12. I'm going to go a little bit long, but that's okay. You can come, this will be recorded, and you'll be able to see the recording. My guess is before the end of the day, because this will be on our YouTube channel. Okay, so here's the T-bar, and we talked about how important a T-bar is. So when I sat down and talked to him to get his current position, he didn't want to sell right now. And he said, my property taxes are too high. That's why I'm having to sell. And he goes, and I said, well, have you thought about fighting your property taxes? And he said, I don't know how to fight my property taxes. And okay. I'm like, why didn't you ever learn? He said, well, you can't fight City Hall and win. And I said, so, what's really the problem here? And he goes, the problem is I can't afford to pay our property taxes. And I said, are you wanting to move? He's like, no, I don't want to move. I want to be here. So these are the problems. And so as he's telling me what the problems are, I'm just doing an arrow to the right-hand side. When he said, I don't want to sell right now, I'm thinking to myself, okay, you don't have to sell right now. Left-hand side, my property taxes are too high. Right-hand side, we can lower your property taxes. I know how to do that. Left-hand side, I don't know how to fight my property taxes. Right-hand side, I've been fighting property taxes for nearly 20 years. I know how to do this. Left-hand side, I don't want to move. Right-hand side, you don't have to move. He's telling me how to structure the deal. If he doesn't have to worry about the property taxes, and that means he doesn't have to sell, that solves the problem that he has. And so when he doesn't want to move, and especially doesn't want to move right now, the best tool to use in this case is going to be an option agreement. Me making him an offer to buy his house is not the best tool to use. He doesn't want to sell. He's told me that. So I asked him, what is the fair market value? This is in 2020. And he said $175,000. And I worked a tight area. I know the area well. And so it was like, okay, I knew the area and I knew he was just about right. We didn't have to run an appraisal. I knew what houses in this neighborhood are selling for. And 175 was pretty much a fair price. And I said, you know what? From now on, I'll be fighting your property taxes and I'm good at it. And next I said, and this is what got him, I said, from now on, I'll pay your taxes for you. You never have to pay your property taxes again. Do you think that got his attention? Do you think maybe he looked and said, wow, okay, I'm listening. I got your attention. And I said, now in return, because he said, well, what's the other shoe? Well, when the other shoe drops, what is it? I said, in return, I want you to give me a 30-year option. In other words, the right to buy your house anytime in the next 30 years for $175,000. He told me the value of his house was $175,000. I'm asking to buy it for $175,000, which means over the next 30 years, I will capture all appreciation that property has. As it goes up in value, I'm going to capture that. He's gotten all the appreciation up until now, up until this moment, but after that, I get all the appreciation. And here's the kicker. For every dollar we pay in property taxes, the strike price, the agreed to purchase price, is reduced by $1.50. Could I have said $2? Yes. Could I have said it goes down by $3? Yes. $5? Yes. But I said $1.50. So I'm making a 50% return on my money. I'm good with that. And in talking to him, he said, we don't want to move for at least, we don't want to move for the next 10 years. And then after that, we'll probably go down to Florida. And I said, okay, though you're giving me a 30-year option, I'm agreeing not to exercise it for the first 10 years. So let's go back and look at the T-bar. Look at what he told me. I don't want to move right now. My property taxes are too high. I don't know how to fight my property taxes. Do you see that my offer solved his real estate problems in spades. So the owner doesn't want to sell right now. And again, this is called you just saw a tactical option with the little guy that had the small horse ranch. This is called a strategic option because it's long term. And for us, this is a very long term hold strategy. And it's a perfect deal for someone asked me about using self-directed account. This is a perfect deal for our retirement account. And where does this deal stand today? When we did it, it was 175. That was in 2020. Today, that house is worth $240,000. And my Roth IRA has paid $4,800 in property taxes thus far. And when you do the strike price, because I agreed to pay for 175 for the house, but remember, I get $1.50 off for every dollar I pay in property taxes. The strike price has been reduced down to $67,800. So every time I make the property taxes every year, my strike price is going down. So this option now controls $7,200 in equity. And again, you saw when I did the Vaughn Roadhouse, all the equity we picked up there. So 48 has generated $72,000 in tax-free equity. So what is the yield on my money? What is the return on this? Almost 70%. That's like going and saying, I'd like to invest $1 and have it earn 70% per year. Is this a good structure for us? Is this a good way to use IRAs? And the answer in this case is yes. So with most of our options, they're found by knocking on homeowners' doors. So where do we door knock? I told you, a 5-mile circle around the Cartersville, Georgia Walmart. I'm now door knocking down in Venice. So what do we look for? A blue tarp on the roof, something going on. I'm talking to the neighbors. In this case, he is not, his house was not for sale. I'm in the process of doing 1,000 written offer door knocking challenge, meaning I've been talking about this for 4 years. Things have gotten in the way. I'm now on offer 62 or 63, I think. Wait, hang on. I can tell you. I'm on offer 62 out of the 1,000 offers, and I've done 4 deals. So that's what it's been produced. But here's the thing. I'm taking pictures of every offer I make. I'm doing videos at a lot of the houses. I'm talking to the people who invite me in, or I'm doing this. I'm going to post all these in groups of 25 offers at a time on my website. Like I said, I've been saying I'm going to do this for 4 years. And this is the year I turned 65 this month. And I want to get this done once and for all so someone can look and say, you know what? There's this guy named Bill Cook, and he showed 1,000 written offers he's made. And if you want to know what it takes to succeed as a real estate investor, go watch that series, because you're going to see where I'm working, the address, what my offer is, why someone accepts my offer, why they don't. And I think that's just going to be that's my give back to the real estate investing community, so you can see the work that it takes to succeed. So some of the offers that I make of the 1,000 written offers will be option offers. And again, you've seen a couple of those today. And to be able to see this, you can go to billandkimcook.com. I've not posted them yet, but I plan to start posting within the next month and a half when I come back from Ski Ria. But I want to get these things up and then start door knocking and get this finished this year. So there's so much more to options, guys. And you'll see me cover more, and especially the more complicated options, I'm going to cover on Tuesday night, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern time. But there's so much more to options that I haven't touched on. This is just the very tippy tip of the iceberg. There wasn't time to study the paperwork. You saw a little bit of the paperwork, but not to go through it. And there wasn't time to see all the different options, ways all the different options can be used. You just saw a couple of them. And for some, you're going to see that the options that you're going to see the power of options, and you're going to want to learn more about them. That happened to me in 1999 when I saw Jack Miller's course the first time. It appealed to me. So where do you go to learn about the power of options? Kim and I will be teaching our options course March 22nd, 23rd. So it's coming up fast. And it's going to be in Tampa, Florida. If you can't come down to warm, sunny Tampa, you can attend on Zoom. We're running our early bird special that goes away, I think, a week from Sunday. But right now it's $597. After the early bird special, it goes to $6.97. You can bring a guest for $3.97. And to get more information and to register, go to billingkimcook.com and you'll see the link there right there on the front page. So what do you get with this course? First of all, it's a 2-day seminar. It's in person or on Zoom. The manual is 280 pages and it has documents and it has deals and it has explanations. And you'll see a lot of real world case studies. So by the end of the 2 days, your head's going to hurt. I know my head hurt with Jack Miller, but I was able to study that and take that home and then go put it to work. And you also get all of my documents. Remember, they're state specific. So if you're in Georgia and Florida, they're going to work easily. I also have one that I did in North Carolina, but you're going to want to run it by your attorney because I'm not an attorney and I'm not a CPA, but each state's laws when it comes to contracts are state specific. So some of the smartest investors in the country will be coming to this seminar. Well, anyways, some of the best investors in the country will be here. And this program always sells out. The in-person portion always sells out. We have room on Zoom, but this will be a sellout. So if you do want to come, our room block ends soon and you want to get registered quickly. You also will get a video recording of the class so you can come back and watch the class again and again. And that's true for whether you're in person or on Zoom. There's an unconditional money back guarantee that says after the class is over with, if you feel it wasn't worth your valuable time, we'll gladly give you your money back. No problems, no questions asked. So why attend the Power of Options? If you're not, you're already paying for the course. Your money is already, you're already paying for it, whether you purchase it or not, just in missed deals. So think of the time and effort and money you're putting it into your marketing. So if you better understand advanced creative deal making, will this allow you to close more of your leads? And the answer is yes. And if you said yes, then the Power of Options will pay for itself 100 times over. So for every dollar you spend on options, you'll make $100 back. That's a good return. So again, Power of Options seminar is going to be March 22nd, 23rd, 2025 in Tampa or on Zoom. Early bird special is $597. Do I secure, the question is, do I secure an option with a deed of trust or mortgage? It depends on the state because some states are deed of trust states, are judicial foreclosure states, and some states are non-judicial foreclosure states. So a good example, Georgia is non-judicial, which means you don't have to go in front of a judge to do a foreclosure. However, when you heard Matthew talk in Ohio, they use a mortgage. I'm in Florida. They use a mortgage here. So that's called a judicial foreclosure state, which means I do have to go in front of a judge and give them evidence that, hey, the other person is not performing and I need the right to foreclose. So it depends on your state. And I know that some states, and I can't remember the one top of my head, but some states use both mortgages and deeds of trust. Does that answer the question, Kim?
Hey, Bill, I have a question.
Yeah.
Quick one. I know you mentioned during this presentation at least twice that you farm uh, deals in Georgia neighborhood around Walmart. What's the reason behind that?
Well, this goes back to my Electrolux days. So I sold Electrolux vacuums door to door for 18 years. And you didn't have a territory. You had to make some in your territory. And you wanted to find an area that had good middle of the class folks who they cleaned their homes themselves and they actually had electricity and carpet and the funds to buy an Electrolux vacuum because you could buy a Hoover back then for $39 and an Electrolux back then cost $250. So you can see that an Electrolux is much more expensive. And what we looked for back then was Kmart because those were just good homeowners. And so that was before there was a Home Depot, that was before Lowe's, that was before Walmart when I started selling. So back then I used Kmart and I just kind of drew an area around it and said, this is going to be the area I'm going to work. Simple as that. And so when we moved to Cartersville, Kmart's going out of business. There was a Walmart. I used it. You can use a Home Depot. You can use a Lowe's. They kind of all do the same thing. They do a bunch of marketing before they ever spend millions and millions of dollars building a building and going into business in that area. They do marketing and they're trying to find homeowners who are very stable, who middle class, who will come to Walmart, at least once a week And that's what I look for. So they do the marketing, I do my circle around them, and I'm off to the races. And by the way, I have a door knocking book. If you go to my website, it has in the door knocking book is both. It has both the pretty much all I know about door knocking, along with work, whether you're knocking on someone in foreclosure or someone has a for sale sign or someone doesn't have a for sale sign. And also in that manual, I go through T-bars and teeter-totter offers. So if you go to my website, I think it's $197 for the door knocking book. And I will tell you that it is by far the best door knocking book in the country. Do you want to know why? It's the only door knocking book for real estate investors, I think, in the entire country. And someone else may have a door knocking book. I just haven't ever seen it. So that's why I can say it's the best. Okay, I think that has everything answered. So now what Kim and I are about to do, we are going to be packing up our motorhome, moving it over to a VRBO our friend Ed Taylor has rented to us. And then tomorrow we finish the move. And officially by tomorrow, well, actually, since we sold the motorhome 2 or 3 days ago, we are officially homeless. And I don't have a car because I sold the car with the motorhome. I appreciate y'all being on this call. I hope you're on Tuesday night's call. Again, you have my phone number. You're welcome to give me a call. Don't text me before you call me. Just call me. And if I don't answer, it means I'm busy, but I will call you back. Love you guys. Hope this helped out. Hope you sign up for our class, our Power of Options class on March 22nd, 23rd. It is going to be outstanding. Love you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good luck with the move, Bill.
Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.